time to grade your Mariners trades here on Fan Fiction Friday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, January 12th, 2024. This is Tiding Gonzalez and Colby Padhead for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. This is Fan Fiction Friday, the show where you submit your Mariners trade ideas and we grade them on the 20-80 scouting scale, 20 being the worst, 80 being the best, of course. Let's get into them. And some of these are leftover trades from last week. We were supposed to do Fan Fiction Friday, last week, but then, of course, on Friday, the Mariners made a couple of trades. So we're going to be carrying those over to today's show. And if anything is out of date, we will account for that. Anywho, we're going to start here with Joshua. Mariners receive Luis Arraez, and the Marlins receive Cole Young and Ty France. And Joshua adds, like others, I mainly just want to know what it would take from the Mariners, especially since the Marlins wouldn't find our young pitching enticing. So earlier today, I saw a tweet saying that John Heyman had reported that the Marlins are open to trading Luis Arraez, or they're open to listening to offers. I don't know exactly what the specific wording was, but Luis Arraez is apparently possibly available. And I put out a tweet asking for some, buzzer beater trade ideas for today's show, just to get some last minute deals in possible. And of course, naturally, a lot of them featured Luis Arraez. So Colby, firstly, what do you think, as you sulk in your sadness about Kalen DeBoer and Pete Carroll, what do you think about Joshua's trade? And then secondly, what do you think about the idea of trading for Arraez in general?
I don't think any of this matters.
All right. Yeah. I'm sorry. Pal.
It doesn't seem like you are. It seems like you're enjoying this a little bit, Ty. But
hey, I'm half in pain. The half of your pain I share. I'm just not a Huskies fan, so I don't really feel anything about Kalen DeBoer. Though I do think Pete Carroll to UW. Yeah.
Imagine your wife left you, Ty. That's how bad I'm feeling. Even worse.
My head coach left me.
Yeah, but 2 of mine did. So it's like I lost 2 wives, basically. So what do you know?
True.
So yeah, Luis Arraez immediately, obviously, that's going to set off some alarm bells for Mariner fans. And as you guys may or may not recall, I'm a pretty big Luis Arraez fan. I pitched him last winter, and I think I pitched him our first winter. So obviously that's an interesting idea. Specifically the trade of Cole Young and what was it? Cole Young and Ty France.
Yeah.
I don't think Ty France does anything in this trade. The Marlins already have Josh Bell, who they may or may not be trying to move off their roster. So I guess maybe if they traded Josh Bell, then Ty France would make some sense. But I think Cole Young is, in a pure prospect sense, I think he's about the type of player that you would give up for Arraez, or at least one of the type of players you give up for Arraez. But when I look at what the Marlins are likely going to ask, or what they're actually going to, try and get for Arraez, I think they're going to look for an up-the-middle player. Now, the Mariners do have pitching, but like you mentioned, the pitching staff in Miami is pretty good. It's pretty set. They don't really need any more young arms. Not that you can never have enough, but it's not going to be a priority for them. I think what their priority is going to be is shortstop, catcher, center field, someone who plays up the middle. Well, the Mariners aren't giving up Cal Raleigh for 2 years of Luis Arraez. They're not giving up J.P. Crawford for 2 years of Arraez. They're certainly not giving up Julio Rodriguez. So what do they have to offer? Not a ton. So it's kind of a tight fit. So you pretty much need the Marlins to be interested in prospects, like willing to trade Arraez for prospects. Are they going to do that? Maybe. Not a lot of teams have a excess shortstop or excess catching that they can trade the Marlins. It's two of the hardest positions to fill. So is there somebody out there who might give up their center fielder? maybe. But the
Mhm.
Marlins, again, you have to consider that they're not a team that traditionally spends a ton. So they do have some payroll limitations. So yeah, your Arise thing is a little tricky. I think in theory, a team like Baltimore makes some sense because they have some up the middle young guys. Whereas Seattle really doesn't, unless, of course, again, Miami really likes, like, for example, Ryan Bliss, and then you can sell them on, like, here's Ryan Bliss, and then here's your catcher of the future, Harry Ford, and then here's, you know, Jonathan Clase, who can play center
Yeah.
field in theory.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think a rise in a prospect only type of package, or prospect and a kind of an ancillary major league piece like Ty France in this example. I think
Yeah.
that's interesting to Miami. I don't think it's enough for them to pull the trigger though. So Rise is tricky. And so coming up with a good trade offer for him is difficult.
So let's refamiliarize ourselves with the trade that landed the Marlins Arise last year. And so keep in mind, Arise now has 2 years left of club control when he had 3 last year. He was already pretty much an elite hitter, but became even more so of an elite hitter this year. 354, 393, 469 slash line. That's a 132 WRC plus. Ridiculous numbers, especially on the batting average front. That costs the Marlins Pablo Lopez. Cost them what, 3 years of Pablo Lopez, I believe. 2 years of Pablo Lopez. Can't remember
Mhm.
exactly what it was. It also cost them a shortstop prospect Jose Salas and outfielder Byron Chirrillo, who I believe right now, if we're going off a pipeline, rank as the Twins' 15th and 24th best prospects, if I'm remembering correctly, respectively. So what do you think now? Again, 2 years left of club control on Arise, but he's coming off of a career year. He is a perfect fit positionally in terms of what the Mariners need. I mean, like, he's not a great defender. Let's say that, but he would be at second base. That would be
Mhm.
your second base solution, right? And the Marlins, like you mentioned, probably aren't super enticed by your pitching because of what they already have in their rotation. Now, a key to this could be if they trade Jesus Luzardo, which is possible. And we might actually even talk a little Jesus Luzardo for the Mariners later on in the show. But yeah. But what do you think is kind of the like proper value, knowing what he went for last year and now taking all the context of the past 12 months into account?
Sure. I think it's Brian Wu. And then I think it's tough because you have to balance the value of club control, i.e., 6 years versus 3 years,
Well, and also keep in mind, Lopez was a massive question mark.
right? But certainly with more track record than Wu or Miller.
Right.
So
For sure.
you kind of have to, is 6 years of a guy with 100 innings in the big leagues, is that worth more, less, or the same than a guy who's produced at the big league level, but never really over a full season, but has put up some really impressive like numbers. So it's kind of this tough balancing act. But I think for me, if I'm trying to match that offer, I'm probably going Woo and then something like Gabriel Gonzalez a little bit, and then maybe a Laz Montez or somebody in that range, maybe Jeter Martinez type, somebody in the 12 to 15 range. I think you're going to have to pay a little bit more than uh, than Miami did, just because I think that for a team like Miami, I think they're going to their value the I guess the track record over the club control. So
Right.
I mean, that could go either way, though. Maybe they really value Brian Wu's 6 years, and so you can pay less on the back end. But again, because they have pitching, it's a really difficult, uh, it's a really difficult road to walk. It's a very narrow path to a deal. So I like Luis Arraez a lot. I think he's a really good fit for this lineup. You stick him at the top and in front of Julio, or I guess technically even behind Julio. Um, and I think his bat is good. It's a really good bat, and it's what you want in Seattle. But it's just so hard to see them come up with a deal unless there's a 3-team deal out there, or unless Miami is going to trade some of their young pitching and get the shortstop or the center fielder, or this, and then they're more open to maybe clearing some payroll of Arraez, because Arraez is going to make, I think, about $10 million this year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where you need a third team. Where you're going to need a third team to help, because just knowing what we know right now about the Marlins roster as it currently stands, I think you need a third team that can supply the Marlins with what they want and will take a pure prospect package or one of your pitchers from you. And I think the Mariners ideally would want to trade prospects, right? I think they're holding on for dear life for their pitchers right now. Their young pitchers, especially because we've talked about this. The more that I've thought about it now over time, because I was in that boat of trade one of your young starters for the bat or bats that you need. I really drove that this offseason, or at the start of this offseason. But the more I've thought about it, especially, with the uncertainty about the Mariners payroll situation, not just this year, but in the next, couple of years, if they have to eventually make some tough decisions on someone like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby, you're going to need Bryce Miller or Brian Wu.
Mm-hmm.
Like those guys are infinitely more important to you than they feel right now.
Sure. Just off the top of my head, 3-team deal. Wu to the Reds, Noelvi to the Marlins, and then it's you get Arraez, and then maybe you give the Marlins like Gabriel Gonzalez, and you get back like Trevor Rogers. Like you get back a starting pitcher in the deal.
Right.
And I think Rogers, Max Meyer, maybe like those guys are a little bit lower on the Marlins depth chart just because there's more question marks there. So
could you get Brandon Williamson from the Reds?
You might be able. The Reds have some starting pitching. Like I struggle to call it depth, but they have bodies. They have a lot of bodies. Guys.
Yeah, they have a lot of guys
Connor
to
Phillips.
come through. Yeah.
Could you get Connor Phillips back? Could you get Andrew Abbott? Like, I mean, there are some guys that you might be able to get from that Reds team. So I do think a 3-team deal could make sense. And we know Jerry's going to be creative about it. It's just, again, I don't see a way you're trading Wu or Miller without getting a pitcher back from somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Because those guys are just so important to you right now. And like I said, possibly even more so in 2025, 2026, etc. All right, we're going to go over more of your trades in just a moment. Oh, real quick, we need to give a grade to Joshua's trade.
I don't know. I'll give it a 40 just because it's so fresh and it's hard to really like.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult trade because the Marlins could absolutely love Cole Young and think he's going to be their shortstop next year. And maybe they do that.
True.
So I don't know. It's tough. It's so new. I haven't really had a ton of time to think about the possibility. So I'll give it a 40 just to, give it the benefit of the doubt some.
Fair. All right, we're going to be grading more of your trades in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you again for joining us here on Fan Fiction Friday. We're reading and grading some of your Mariners trades. We got this deal from Anonymous in our Google form. Logan Gilbert to the Diamondbacks for Brandon Pfaadt, Christian Walker, Drew Jones, and Slade Ciccone.
So here's the problem. I like Pfaadt, fine. I think he's a solid replacement. And obviously, I'm a big Christian Walker fan. You get Walker for 1 year.
Yeah.
That's... and then you're hoping that Pfaadt basically is as good as Logan Gilbert when he reaches his ceiling. And Gilbert hasn't even reached his ceiling yet. So, no, I think I'm out on this deal. It's enticing, certainly. But Drew Jones is such a big question mark. Who the hell knows what he's going to do? And then I can't even fathom a guess at the correct pronunciation of the pitcher. I like him. I think he's. I think I do know the arm, and I am intrigued by the arm. Just kind of screams, middle reliever to me. Maybe a little bit better. So for me, it's like 1 year of Walker, a complete lottery ticket in Jones, really a complete lottery ticket on a guy who's probably a middle reliever, and then 6 years of FAF for 4 years of Gilbert.
Yeah.
Just not really doing it for me. So
Yeah.
I think I'd give it a 45, 40, somewhere in that range, because as enticing as it is, and it's a lot of names, and it seems like a great deal, you're only getting the impact bat for 1 year. And then you're hoping that the arm you're getting back is going to be as good as Logan Gilbert is now, eventually.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, Logan Gilbert is Logan Gilbert, but Brandon Pfaadt could be anything, even Logan Gilbert.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, again, it's not that Gilbert has like 2 years of club control left. He's got 4.
Right.
So if he did have 2 years left, I would absolutely do this. If he had 3 years left, I'd consider this. But having 4 years of a guy who's already...
It's just unheard of. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented. Trading someone...
It's nuts. It's just nuts now. If they did do this deal, I wouldn't be mad. Like, I could understand their thought process behind it, certainly, but I just don't think it's enough, as odd as that is.
And you're still going to get a lot for Gilbert if you wait a year, and then you can still extract as much value as possible out of Gilbert on your roster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
basically, it comes down to the question of, like, is this the best you can do for Logan Gilbert? The answer is yes. Then I'm keeping him. Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's terrible.
Yeah, no, I really like Pfaadt. I mean, he's coming off of a run in the postseason.
Sure.
Walker. I love Christian Walker. He's not a great fit on the team, but you can trade Ty France and all that. I'm not letting Ty France impede me from getting Christian Walker.
DFA Ty France if it means I get Christian Walker, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then Drew Jones. I mean, who knows? But obviously, immense talent there, immense raw talent there, and then Ciccone can certainly help too. I really like the arm.
Good breaking ball. Yeah.
But yeah, I would say no to this deal, but I think it's fairly creative. I think it's closer to the mark in terms of what it would require to trade Logan, 45, 50.
Yeah, it's a lot closer than most of the other Logan Gilbert trades we've gotten. Yeah, like this one at least is like,
right.
I'll think about that, but probably no.
All right, we got a simple 1-for-1 here. Another anonymous trade. Harry Ford for Noelvi Marte. It looks very funny, but it's literally just copy and pasted from the Google form. But yeah, that's sure. It's very, very little text in the middle of a big screen. So Harry Ford for Noelvi Marte. I think the Reds do this.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That was my first and biggest question there.
There's just too much risk on Harry Ford. There's really, I mean, and Noelvi Marte is 23 years old. Like, I think if like the Mariners want Noelvi Marte back, it's going to cost them Miller. Maybe Woo, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And so just because I think Miller has more value doesn't necessarily mean everybody else does, but it's going to cost you one of those two arms at minimum. Right. And maybe a little bit more. So, and I wouldn't add more, for the record. Like, if I want Noelvi back, you can have Miller or Woo, and that's it. Maybe you even have to throw something my way to even this trade out. So I don't think they're going to do that. I think that, like, I don't know if Ford can headline a package for like like either a young potential all-star player or like a proven all-star level player. I don't know if he's quite there yet. So I don't think there's any way the Reds would even consider this, but it's definitely different. I'll give you that.
It's fascinating. It's a very interesting challenge. And it's also, funny. I just don't think the Reds do this.
I don't think they're interested in that for a second. So
yeah. I'll give you a 40. But yeah, I think the Reds are asking for more, and I'm out.
Yep.
I'm out.
Same.
All right. We got a few more of your trades coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. But first, a reminder, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All right, sailors, the NFL regular season may be over, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. You can also find bets in the new Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find popular parlays. While the Seahawks are done, Mariners baseball is almost here, folks. So is betting on Mariners baseball. But while you wait for the boys to take the field, you can still bet on the Kraken and Huskies basketball. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKEDON, and make your first bet a layup. Again, that is fanduel.com/lockedon, LOCKEDON. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. And you are listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Fan Fiction Friday. We got a few more of your trades to read and grade and talk all about. We're going to pick up here with another anonymous trade from the Google form. Orioles receive Prolander Baroa, Ty Adcock, and Alberto Rodriguez. The Mariners receive Austin Hayes.
It's interesting. I'd say that. Now, I think the problem you're going to run into with the Mariners is that you might prefer Prolander Baroa to Hayes straight up, because you kind of have, Austin Hayes on your roster, so to speak, with a couple different, like, very similar type of players, and you don't have another Prolander Baroa, unless maybe you really believe in Carlos Vargas or somebody like that. But right now, I don't think you have another Prolander Baroa. You go sign Robert Stevenson, like, okay, we can talk about this, but it's certainly not a bad trade. I wouldn't be upset. I mean, I think obviously Alberto Rodriguez is kind of just a throw in at this stage. But I think it's intriguing. To me, this deal is basically Baroa for Hayes. I mean, more or less in the grand scheme of things. I think that's totally fine. I think if I am trading Baroa, then Hayes is the type of player I'm going to try and, acquire I don't want to say a fringe everyday guy, but not really an all-star. I know Hayes made an all-star team, but he's not really an all-star, if that makes sense. Like, he's not that type of player. So I like the idea, certainly. I just think it's as funny as it sounds. The Mariners might prefer Baroa, the complete question mark, to Hayes, who is a pretty sure bet to hit some.
Yeah,
so,
he's been a very consistent hitter. Last 3 years, 100 WRC plus or higher, 106 in 2021, 107 in 2022, and then 112 this past year, /275, 325, 444. It's 2.2 FOR, 16 home runs, 67 ribs. Good player.
I could just go get Tommy Pham if I want this type of player.
Yeah,
I mean, less risk with Hayes, certainly, but
yeah. I just don't think the Orioles say yes. I think that's what I'm kind of getting hung up on here. I know that they need bullpen help.
Repeat the deal one more time. Baroa.
It's
Rodriguez,
Baroa, Adcock, and
Adcock.
Rodriguez. Yeah.
To me, that's just Baroa for Hayes. No disrespect to Adcock and Rodriguez, but they don't move the needle for the Orioles at all. So
yeah. I don't know. I know that the Orioles they need bullpen help, and they just signed Craig Kimbrell to that big 1 year deal for $13 million. Bautista's out all of this year, so I get kind of the logic and the process of this, but given how many question marks there are with Baroa and the fact that the Orioles are probably not going to spend the money that it would take to, I mean, look, they have other options. They have Colton Cowser, they have Heston Kjerstad, they have other guys that can play in a corner outfield spot for them to essentially supplement.
They still have Mountcastle and Santander.
Yeah, they have other options to supplement Hayes' spot in their lineup, but they're pretty big question marks too right now. I just don't know if they would.
Do you think they'd be more interested if it was Justin Topa?
Maybe.
Like somebody with a track record?
I just don't know if they're going to step away from that level of certainty in their lineup, relative certainty in their lineup, for someone like Baroa, who obviously high upside in the back end of the bullpen, but you don't know if he can throw enough strikes. And like Topa, I mean, Topa's a solid, 6th, 7th inning guy, but is that enough for an everyday corner outfielder? who has 2 years left. I don't know. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here is, like, again, the Orioles aren't going to spend a ton of money. Hayes is getting more expensive.
Mhm.
So does
Yeah.
that also kind of drive them to want to trade him? Maybe.
Possibly.
But they've held on to Santander. So
Sure, but I really hate the argument, and I see it a lot, is that, like, if player X was going to get traded, it would have happened already. That's not a thing, guys. That's not a thing. Stop that. That's lazy, is what that is. So yeah, but like we said, the Orioles, we keep on. It's kind of like the Twins, right? We keep on saying they're going to shed payroll, and yet they haven't done it yet.
right.
So I think there's a fine line between, like, if player X was going to get moved, it would have already happened, and, like, maybe we don't have the information that we thought we did, or maybe the information we got was a little bit off, and there's an explanation for why player X
Yeah.
hasn't been moved yet.
No.
So is Topa even ARB eligible? I think he's a year short. So
I think he's pretty yeah.
And Hayes, I think, has 2 years left of club control. Or is he a Super 2? He might have been a Super 2.
He has 2 years left.
Yeah. So 4 years of Topa for 2 years of Hayes, and Hayes, I don't know what his ARB number came in at yesterday, but I assume it's $5, $6, $7 million bucks, somewhere in that range. They might consider that. Overall, though, I'll give this a 50 because I think it's logical.
We had a very extensive discussion because of it. So for that reason, yeah, 50.
Yeah, I think it's logical. I think it's, like, not the worst idea in the world. I think both sides could say yes. I think both sides could say no. Like, I think that it's definitely worth having a conversation about. So I'll give it a 50.
Sure. Last trade, we got the show bookended by Marlins trades. This one is a lot of bulk for Jesus Luzardo. Ty France, Harry Ford, Gabriel Gonzalez, Emerson Hancock, and Ty Pete for Jesus Luzardo, who has 3 years left of club control.
It's an overpay.
All right, elaborate.
It's an overpay. I'm not gutting the farm system for Jesus Luzardo. Sorry, he's not that guy. He's really good. I really want him.
Very good. Very good.
Yes. Am I willing to give up 4 of my top 5 prospects to get him? Nope. But what I am willing to give up is Harry Ford, Ty Pete, Emerson Hancock, and Gabriel Gonzalez. See what I did there?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the deal. This might be what it costs to get Luzardo. I think you're going to have a hard time getting Luzardo without giving up Cole Young or Colt Emerson. That's kind of my hang up. And I think you might have a hard time getting, even if you included those guys, you're going to have a hard time getting Luzardo, because I think that the Marlins, I don't think that they are, like, we're competing in 2024 at all cost. Clearly not. But I think they can. And honestly, they should think that. They have a pretty decent team. Now, they're basically already told Jorge Soler, you're leaving. Like, we're not interested in you. So there are some holes in that lineup. So I think you have to give them a everyday hitter.
How France is that?
I mean, like, technically, yes.
Yeah.
But I think we know better. So I think if I could get Luzardo for Ty France, Harry Ford, and Gabriel Gonzalez, I do it. You start throwing on Ty Pete, and
I think it's just weird to me that, like, one of the pitchers is not involved here.
Yeah.
Because, like, the Mariners at that point, they're going to have to trade one of the starters anyway, and one could argue that you're going to get more value out of trading the one of the pitchers in a separate deal afterwards. But
right,
this just feels like a lot of unnecessary bulk. I know it's a lot, but it feels kind of unnecessary when I think the Marlins would want one of those pitchers back, and then, like, Harry Ford or whatever.
They might want Young or Emerson. Like, it might cost you Miller and Emerson.
Yeah,
for Luzardo, and at that point,
it's like, because exactly. I'm out too on that, because I really like Luzardo, and he gives you a left-handed arm that you don't really have right now. I get the entire appeal of Luzardo, but I feel like, and it's very possible that Luzardo's ready to take that next step into being like a Cy Young contender this year.
Right.
But I also feel like there's a non-zero chance that Bryce Miller or Brian Wu could eventually get there too.
Sure, you get him for 6 years instead of 3.
For 3, and it's like like it's kind of the whole like Jesus Luzardo is Jesus Luzardo, but Brian Wu could
Brian
be
Wu
anything
could be
even.
even
It's
Jesus,
that thing too, right? So I know I'm kind of contradicting myself here a little bit, but I don't think it's really necessary for the Mariners to do a deal like this right now.
Right.
I
Now,
get
if you
it
wanna
though.
Sure. If you want to talk Jesus Luzardo and Luis Arraez, all of a sudden one of those pitchers is certainly on the table for me.
Yeah.
Maybe even both of them, but probably not both. But if it's Arraez and Luzardo for Miller, Young, Ford, and Ty France or whatever, then I'm very interested in that. So it's just the Marlins are kind of a tough team to line up with, which is a little unfortunate because I do like a lot of pieces on their team, including Luzardo. So it's a really tough team to kind of give a fair grade to because we just don't know a lot about what their plans are, what their goal is for this upcoming year. How serious are they really about trading Luzardo? And you try to factor in Hollander saying like 90% of the league doesn't want young prospects right now. And so that's kind of what the Mariners bread and butter would be to offer.
Yeah.
These Marlin trades are tough, man. They're really tough.
Yeah.
So
I just don't think they're a great fit.
Yeah, unfortunately, because I would love Luzardo. I would love Arraez. I would love Trevor Rogers. Obviously, Max Meyer. I would love him. Or is it Max Myers? You tell me, Ty.
It's Meyer. It's Meyer.
There you go.
No S.
I'd be a big fan of that. I like Jesus Sanchez. Like it's a fun team to look over. And Josh Bell makes some sense if you trade Ty France. So, and we have heard that the Mariners did check in on Josh Bell. Just throw that out there.
Yeah.
It's an interesting trade. It is bulk, but it's also not like a lot of the time on Fan Fiction Friday, like the bulk deals we see are like, here's 4 players I was going to DFA anyways. Give me your all-star.
Right.
This is not that. This is a lot different. This is a lot better. So I'd say I'll split the difference. I say 45. Like, I think it starts a conversation, but I don't know if either side is interested in this trade. Which is maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. 40, 45, somewhere in that range, I think.
42.5. Because I know you love that. No, I'll go 40. I'll go 40. I don't think it's necessary. I do like Luzardo. I think there's a lot of upside there, like in the immediate, but you have guys like that in your rotation, and you have very high upside guys on the back end of your rotation, and Miller and Wu. Who could eventually be Luzardo-esque starters as soon as 2025, if not sooner. I'll pass. If I gotta add multiple top prospects of mine into this deal to get him, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, a big Luzardo fan though, so would not be upset.
All right, so thank you all for all of your trades. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball weekend. We'll see you next time. Peace.